You may have heard of lizard people, whether on a conspiracy website, sci-fi movie, or other form of media. In the most recent decades, there have been active conspiracies that lizard people walk among us disguised as celebrities and other public figures, as well as making up secret organizations like the Illuminati. I mean, you never know. I myself might be a lizard. Though the idea of lizard people masquerading as notable public figures in the country has yet to be proven. There have been eyewitness accounts of lizard people all over. In this video, we will be looking at some of the most prominent lizard people sightings to take place in the United States alone. Now you may be wondering, what exactly is a lizard person, or what does one of these beings look like? Lizard people, also known more commonly as reptilians, are described as being shape-shifting interdimensional beings or demons that may look like people, but of course aren't. In fact, there was speculation that the Queen Elizabeth, who perished recently, was also a reptilian in disguise. These creatures may seem like they're right out of your favorite horror film or comic book. There have been plenty of eyewitness accounts that insist that reptilians are not only present, but actually running our world. In the summer of 1988, woods and small towns in Lee County, South Carolina, saw an uproar of reptilian sightings. It all came down to eyewitnesses seeing a frightening creature that quickly earned the name of Lizard Man. In particular, this creature was spotted in the Scape or swamp area. It almost seemed like a domino effect had transpired as one sighting led to another, and even the media could not help but get involved in the sensationalism and mystery of a strange reptilian being spotted by unsuspecting witnesses. It all began on July 14th in 1988 when the Way family called the Lee County Sheriff's Office with a terrifying claim. The family detailed that some strange creature had savagely attacked their vehicle, which was a 1985 Ford. The damage to the car was extensive and consisted of claw marks and even possible bites to the body of the vehicle, especially in the hood. Deputies responded to the call and were disturbed to see the family had not been exaggerating their story. The car was deeply damaged, and the muddy area near it was covered in footprints that were clearly not human. While some of the footprints were small and seemed to be those of a fox, some of them were large and described to have human-like qualities. These footprints could not be attributed to any animal in the area, and yet they did not seem to be completely human. Stumped, the deputies surveyed the scene and decided that it was time to get County Sheriff Liston Truesdale involved. News of the savage damage afflicted on the Way family's vehicle quickly spread throughout the local area like wildfire. Sheriff Truesdale said this to author and Bigfoot investigator Lyle Blackburn, who wrote a book on the events that developed, aptly titled Lizard Man. While we were there looking over the situation, we learned that people in the Browntown community had been seeing a strange creature about 7 feet tall with red eyes. Some of them described it as green, but some of them as brown. They thought it might be responsible for what had happened. Word of the Way family occurrence spread and reached Chris Davis, who was only 17 at the time. It was Tommy, Chris's father, who had seen the reports on the Way's family and reached out to Sheriff Truesdale to let him know that his son had his own horrifying experience to share as well. Now, Chris's story would be one of the biggest catapults to sensationalize the idea of Lizard Man and bring some attention to the area concerning this strange creature. The story goes like this. In that same year, 1988, Chris had been working at a local McDonald's. It was on the night of June 29th, about 2 weeks before the Way family incident, that Chris was finishing a late shift around 2 a.m. The young man began his journey home, and part of his route home ensured that Chris would have to pass a part of the Scape or swamp. Unfortunately, during his commute home, Chris had to pull over in the area due to a tire blowout, a situation that sucks for any of us. Now, the young man changed his tire and was putting his tools back in the car's trunk when he sees a figure emerging hanging in the trees. This figure was large and human-like, with 2 glowing eyes and 3 fingers on each hand. Immediately horrified, Chris jumps back in his car and attempts to speed off. The creature would come into contact with Chris's vehicle, allowing for an up-close interaction that would allow Chris to get a pretty good look at the thing and be able to confidently describe it. Chris stated, "I looked back and saw something running across the field towards me. It was about 25 yards away, and I saw red eyes glowing. I ran into the car, and as I locked it, the thing grabs the door handle. I could see him from the neck down, 3 big fingers, long black nails, and green rough skin." Chris described immediately starting his vehicle and swerving to shake off the creature as he drove. He would at some point free his car from the creature and lose sight of it in the frenzy to get away. As mentioned before, it would be the emergence of this account that would lead to more stories and occurrences surrounding this mysterious creature. Now, Sheriff Truesdale would begin to receive many reports of eyewitness accounts of this same strange creature, so much so that an official police dossier was created. In this dossier is also the eyewitness account of John Blythers, who described a terrifying incident that occurred to him and his family members on July 30th, 1990. Blythers recounted his story to the sheriff's department the next day. The previous night at around 10:30 p.m., Johnny, his mother Bertha May Blythers, and his 2 sisters were journeying home from the Browntown section of Lee County. While passing through the Scape Ore Swamp, where a lot of lizardman activity had been noted, Johnny voiced his disbelief in the creature, arguing that somebody would have seen it or caught it. His mother was driving the car, and they had made it about a mile or mile and a half when they themselves saw it. It was on the right side, it came out of the bushes, it jumped out on the road, and it jumped out of the bushes like he was going to jump on the car. When my mother mashed the brakes, it looked like it wanted to get in the car. His mother, Bertha May, also contributed to the account. She describes the same event, going to her mother's house to pick up Johnny and then grabbing something to eat before making their way through Browntown and Scape Ore Swamp. Bertha May recounts, "I was looking straight ahead and saw this big brown thing. It jumped up at the window, I quickly sped up and went on the other side of the road to keep him from dragging my 11-year-old girl out of my car." Now, reports of this creature stem all the way from the 1980s up to the 2000s, memorably known as the Lizard Man. It is safe to say that something dwelled in that area that could not be human. Could it have been a reptilian? And if so, is it still around today? Though there is often speculation when it comes to the existence of a lizard man and lizard people, Bishopville, South Carolina embraces the folklore. There is even an official lizard man historical exhibit at the South Carolina Cotton Museum in the town, with a sign pointing to the area where Chris Davis first saw the lizard man as detailed previously. There is even a lizard man festival paying homage to the creature. Festival planner John Stamey says this about the lizard man: "To be honest with you, there's something in Scape Ore Swamp. We will one day find out what is causing all of this if we keep looking." Sightings continue to be reported to the area to this day, and though not all the locals are self-proclaimed believers of the lizard man, you will not find anyone dispelling the lore either. Now, another city that has been connected to the existence of lizard people is, of course, the City of Angels. Most notable is the conspiracy that a highly developed race of lizard people built a magnificent underground city right in the area of downtown Los Angeles. And I mean underground. This theory can be traced all the way back to the 1930s when George Warren Schulfett, a mining engineer, claimed to have discovered an old map to find buried treasure under the city of Los Angeles. Schulfett then went on a journey to understand exactly what he'd found, one that led him to Chief Greenleaf, a Hopi native at a medicine lodge in Arizona. Chief Greenleaf went on to explain the story of the lizard people, which were a lost advanced civilization. They were described by Greenleaf as Earthlings, which could mean humans or inhabitants of the Earth. Could lizard people have been one of the first civilizations to walk the planet? And Chief Greenleaf mentioned this civilization was so advanced, their children had the intelligence of college graduates. In 1934, Schulfett would make a startling discovery. The engineer proclaimed that he had discovered a series of underground tunnels and rooms filled with treasures and golden objects beneath Fort Moore Hill in the downtown area of LA. This was achieved using a device Schulfett himself had developed, called a radio X-ray. Obtaining funds and getting the proper permissions to begin an excavation project, Shufelt began to drill into the area where he'd first made the discovery. However, this was a short-lived project. There were concerns of cave-ins. The following spring, lack of media attention and resources would bring the excavation project to a complete standstill. Shufelt disappeared from the public eye and would later die in 1957, never achieving the discovery he insisted was under Los Angeles. There was even an article published in the Los Angeles Times in 1934 about this lost civilization of lizard people. This article stated, "The radio X-ray he revealed the location of one of the 3 lost cities on the Pacific coast, the local one having been dug by the lizard people after the Great Catastrophe which occurred about 5,000 years ago. This legendary catastrophe was in the form of a huge tongue of fire which came out of the southwest, destroying all life in its path, the path being several hundred miles wide. The underground city was dug as a means of escaping future fires. Large rooms in the domes of the hills above the city of labyrinths housed 1,000 families, and imperishable food supplies of herb variety was stored in the catacombs to provide sustenance for the lizard folk for great lengths of time. There are working theories surrounding the lizard people of Los Angeles. Some people believe that this was a civilization of regular humans who worshipped the reptile and were referred to as such due to this. However, there is also the belief that lizard people are just that, reptile humanoids far more advanced than their own human counterparts that resided in an underground developed city of their own. Not only have reports of these reptilian humanoid creatures been in swampy or metropolitan areas, but even in the desert. In February of 2014, 3 Tucson residents were biking through the old Pueblo race course when they were met with a chilling discovery. One of the bicyclists described how they were about halfway through the route. This is an extensive and challenging route, by the way, so they had been dedicated to the journey for hours, taking breaks in between, of course. The eyewitness stated that one of his friends had mentioned stopping for a minute. We were waiting for him to finish when, all of a sudden, we see this long figure walking across the trail. He is maybe about 6 foot tall, very, very skinny, and had a very awkward gait, like a monkey or a man with a disease, almost robotic. The men were startled, and one of them even asked aloud what the creature was. They found themselves approaching it cautiously, perhaps to get a clearer image of what it was. The creature stopped its walking. The bicyclist explains, "I could see him clearly. The eyes were kind of like a snake's, but black and with a yellow stripe in the middle of the eye. It had green and red scales on the face and head. It didn't have a nose, only 2 holes on its face, and a red mouth that looked like it had blood around it. But it didn't look like it was bleeding, it looked like a pattern. It reminded me of a chameleon, but it looked like a person too." The bicyclist claimed the creature raised its arms, which were long with odd-looking claws that looked like a branch full of thorns, and began to make a loud chattering sound. The creature then retreated quickly, which the men likened to a lizard trying to hide. Though extremely rattled, the men decided to finish their excursion. The recounting witnesses stated, "When you read these stories online or watch them on TV, well, you think maybe these people are crazy, on meds or something, or in need of attention, but this has made me a believer. There has to be more of them out there. I mean, if there's one, there's gotta be at least 2, right?" This incident occurred even before the 1988 Chris Davis sighting that would garner so much attention and theorizing. The year was 1977. Cherry Hinkle's son and a friend were hiking along the slopes near the Black Mountain in Nevada. This area had a few abandoned mines and caves. The trio had climbed a few of the little hills in the front of Black Mountain when the young boys, Mark and Harry, located a cave. The 2 young boys crawled through the cave into a larger room, and after turning on their pocket flashlights, they saw a circular room along one of the back walls, a bigger hole. They found a couple of larger branches in this room and used these branches to create a ladder that could help them climb down to this bigger hole. The boys then explored this main cave that they also found themselves in, and also located another short tunnel within it. The boys heard what they thought to be voices and machinery. Thinking they'd stumbled into some sort of mining project, the boys followed the sounds and came to a rusted metal door with a mysterious metal rod nearby. The rod was about 1 foot long and resembled aluminum, with a cap on one end and strange markings on the other side. In no time, what the boys had thought to be voices became strange guttural sounds. Frightened as the vocalizations seemed to come nearer, the boys went back the way they came, crawling out of the cave and thinking that they had escaped this very strange situation. Suddenly, a low and threatening growl came from the cave. What the boys saw left them completely shocked. They looked on as a large green humanoid being struggled to exit the cave as well. The boys did not wait any longer and ran all the way back to Cherry and Mark's backyard. The two boys quickly told Cherry about what they'd seen, and as evidence they showed her the metal rod which they had taken from the cave. Cherry describes the strange markings on it. It was just symbols from spirals, circles of different sizes, a few triangles, and a few unknown symbols. This odd encounter was far from over. Cherry describes trying to get Mark and her 3 other kids to bed that night. Then, around 2 in the morning, Cherry is woken up by Mark whispering that someone is trying to break in through his bedroom window. However, after following the young boy back to his room, Cherry discovered that what she hoped was a nightmare was actually real. There were scraping sounds at the window, and she could make out the silhouette of the head and shoulders of what she believed to be a man. Cherry grabs a flashlight, drew the curtain to expose the man, but this was no ordinary intruder. She states, "There was a glare from the flashlight on the window, but past the glare, I could clearly see a large head with ridges on top, other ridges on his cheekbones, and the glow of golden eyes." Mother and son stood there shell-shocked from fear. The lizard man also froze, his hand still on the window. His hand was large, with webbed, rough, gnarly-looking fingers with powerful claws. Now, after a few agonizing minutes, Cherry finally moved and searched around with one hand for something to arm herself with. The lizard man watched her but did not complete any threatening actions. The encounter concluded with, he turned his head a little as if he was asking a question. He slightly opened his lips, displaying 4 of his pointed teeth, and suddenly he turned and ran off into the desert. Cherry decided the rod Mark and his friends had brought to their home had to be returned to the cave from where it was found. This rod is why Cherry assumed the reptile humanoid had been trying to make its way into their home. Mark and Cherry hiked over to the cave the very next day, leaving the rod at the entrance of the cave. It seems that after this, the mother and her children were never bothered again by these beings. Not even the state of Texas, though, seems to be safe from lizard people. In 1984, in the small town of Honey Grove, Texas, eyewitness Kelly was awoken one night with the maniacal barking of her dogs. She heard twigs breaking and thought perhaps her daughter's pony had gotten loose. Kelly arose from bed, went to her front door, which had glass panes that allowed her to see out into the street. Kelly and her family lived near a very bright streetlight, which the night allowed Kelly to see something she would never forget. She goes on to describe the creature. "I saw a lizard standing on 2 feet with his back to me. He had crossed the road and his tail was so long it was still halfway in the road. He was gray. I could see scales. His arms, for lack of a better word to call them, went between his hip and his knees, and he was just nonchalantly walking across the road. It was just like looking at a chameleon, if that would have been blown up to 7 feet, and its tail was humongous. The young mother at the time did not speak of what she saw because she was afraid of the attention that this could attract to her and her daughters in the small town they lived in. However, she did finally share the story years later and stated, "I think people should know that there are things out there that don't fall into the category of A to Z in a regular human world." To understand the idea of reptilians, we should go back a little bit to the origins of lizard people and some of the most common theories when it comes to their existence and how they came to inhabit the planet. The first mention of lizard people to have recognized influence was in Robert E. Howard's 1929 story, The Shadow Kingdom. This story introduced a community of reptilian humanoids who lived in underground homes on planet Earth. Maurice Doreal, an occultist and mystic correspondence school founder, also mentioned lizard people in his writings. Doreal was involved in the religion of Theosophy. which taught of an ancient and secretive brotherhood of spiritual experts simply known as the Masters. Doreal claimed that in the city of Los Angeles in 1931, he had met with two Atlanteans, which belonged to species of amphibious humanoids that had led him to an unknown cave underneath Mount Shasta. While interacting with these Atlanteans, Doreal stated that he had learned more about underground races that inhabited the Earth besides humans, including an underground serpent race. Several of Doreal's published booklets were loaded with warnings against these serpent people, which were parallel to the lizard people or reptilians we're speaking about today. Now, in today's society, there is still a wide speculation on the existence of reptilians. Besides the non-human beings that seem to roam the desert and swamp areas, there is a widespread belief of a civilization of reptilian that may have sinister motives. David Icke is one of the most well-known theorists behind the lizard people topic. Icke, however, does not see reptilians are just another civilization that walk among us. Since the 90s and a particular surge in the 2000s, Icke's ideas have focused on humankind actually evolving from reptilians in general. Icke claims that lizard people exist among us while moonlighting as very prominent people, such as political figures and other well-known celebrity types. In fact, one survey found that around 12 million people in America thought the government was being controlled by shape-shifting reptilians. An article was even published in Atlantic's website detailing how to spot reptilians. For those curious, reptilians or lizard people have distinctive qualities such as piercing eyes, low blood pressure, deep compassion for the fate of humankind, and unexplained scars on the body, among other details. However, it is up to you to take into account the eyewitness accounts we've covered. Are lizard people currently walking among us? Are reptilians real? Are they another civilization that is kept to themselves and have only ever been glimpsed on by other people? Or are they truly a part of the Nephilim? Are they demons masquerading as a being or race? Are lizard people working on a secret agenda that involves manipulating humankind and achieving something? Are some of the most widely recognized political and social figures actually shapeshifters and are trying to control our media, lives, and even minds? There are many questions that arise when concerning lizard people, and the answers may vary depending on who you ask. One thing may be certain, however. Towns like Bishopville, South Carolina, pay homage to the lizard man of the area, and aren't exactly worried about any sinister events happening. While thinking of human-like reptilians can be enough to frighten a lot of us, some people believe lizard people are simply just another underground race that is coexisting with us on this planet. But more importantly, I want to know what you guys think. Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from all of you. Also, if you're a fan of storytelling of the mysterious and supernatural, be sure to go ahead and smack that like and subscribe button for more content just like this. As always, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll catch you guys in the very next video.